You ever feel like your shift is dragging or you're just kind of going through the emotions? The secret to enjoying your shift and making better money, it's being present. And we're going to talk about what that really means and how you can actually do it. Let's jump into it. But before we jump into it, I need to fix my hair. Welcome to Beyond the Order. My name is Corey, and I will be taking care of you today. If this is your first time here, I just want to say welcome to the restaurant. No, really, this channel is all about the psychology behind hospitality, how to communicate, how to read your guests, and how to elevate your service in a way that actually makes a difference. And today we're going to talk about the power of presence as a server, as a waiter. Now, why this topic? So when we're not present, when we are not focused, then stress and frustration are going to take over. And now that frustration is going to spill into our tables, our coworkers, and our own experience of the shift that we are having. Learning to be present is going to help you work smarter and not harder, and it changes the way you actually experience service altogether. Let's talk about what does it actually mean to be present. There are going to be 3 levels of being present when you're in a shift. Now, the first one is being present with yourself. This is where you are going to check in. What's my mindset? Are there any frustrations? Is there any anger? What are my emotions? How am I going to regulate those emotions? Are you carrying any of those emotions or frustrations with you? The second level is being present with your environment. This is where you are going to observe. You're going to step back and you're going to kind of look at the bigger picture. What's actually happening around me? How's the flow of service? Then there is being present with your guests. This is where you give each of your guests and each of your table a fresh experience. You don't want to bring the old frustrations or issues with a previous table, or maybe there was a mistake, or with a coworker or a manager. You don't want to bring that experience into the experience of your new table. You want to kind of have a fresh, clean slate when you enter into that table and when you're with them. Now, how do servers actually check out? How are they mentally not present? Now, there are a few different ways that this can take place, and these are some things that I have observed. You've got mindless phone scrolling, and it's like where you're physically there, but you're not mentally at work. Now, I know everybody has their things with should you have phones in the workplace or not. I'm a big believer that as long as the tasks that you have gotten taken care of, or it's not during rush hour, then I think just kind of stepping back in the kitchen and kind of being on your phone a little bit, I think that's fine. People have different opinions on that. I realize that even when I managed at places, that people were going to be on them. So if you give them that space and you set the boundaries, they're more prone to actually respect that. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Another way that servers mentally check out is by daydreaming at the end of the shift. Instead of focusing on the moment, this could be, I don't really want to be here. It could be that last hour of the restaurant being open. So maybe you get that guest that comes in within that last hour, or God forbid, the last 15 minutes, and your level of attentiveness actually goes down, your level of focus goes down, and maybe you're not as present with this guest as you are with the guest at the beginning of the shift. And the thing is that the guest that's in front of you, whether they're there the last hour or the first hour or in between, they should get the same level of presence that everybody else gets. Another way is complaining about slow sections or bad tips, or which shifts focus from what you can control. When you're complaining, you're not actually focusing on the things that you can control. You're not, if you're complaining about how the host said or how the tips are, this is kind of taking you away from the areas that you can actually control, because we can't actually can control everything, which is where it's important to kind of step back and observe the whole bigger picture. This gives you the ability to see what you can and cannot control. And then getting into autopilot service, this is where maybe you're asking questions, but you're not really listening. Maybe you're doing everything correct. You're saying, or you're saying the correct things, but you're not actually present with your guests. You're just looking to say the next thing that you want to say that's in your script, which is, instead of actually listening to what the guests are telling you and what they actually need. What are some of the negative effects of not being present? Not being present is going to create more anxiety, and it's going to create a sense of overthinking, where you are going to carry that frustration or those emotions from one table to the next. And unfortunately, like as people, we're gonna have frustrations, we're gonna have off days, we're gonna have difficulties, we're gonna have things that aren't gonna go right. And sometimes, like, even as much as you self-regulate and you emotionally regulate and you observe, you're gonna have off days. So I wanna be very, say this isn't about being perfect, it's about becoming better so that you can get to that. But the goal isn't necessarily perfection as much as it is just learning to keen in and be aware of these different things, so that the next shift you can be better, and the next and the next and the next, and you're always improving. When you take those experiences and you're not present, the guests are going to feel that. The guests eventually are going to read into that. And like I said earlier, maybe you're saying the right things, but because you're not present, the guests may feel rushed or ignored, or they're going to feel like something is off, like even if you say the right words. And so that's going to come out in your tonality, that's going to come out in your body language. And so by being present, you're going to, with those three levels of present with yourself, present with your environment, and present with your guests, you're going to be able to check in to see where you're at before you approach your table. Another negative side effect of not being present is that the shift is actually just going to feel longer and harder and less rewarding. I mean, I can think about when I was in elementary school or middle school, and it was towards the end of the day, and I would just, or the end of class, and you would just look at the clock, tick, 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 tock, tick, tock. And no matter what, like, it was like that clock was not moving, no matter how much. Now, that's not true, but it was like time just slowed down. So when you're in this negative effect of not being present, it's going to slow down time, it's going to slow down your shift, it's going to, or it's going to feel like that, and that's going to make you more frustrated. So I want to give you all actually a personal story where presence changed my mind. So the other day I was at work, and we were in our pre-shift, and the manager was reading the general manager was reading these reviews, and they weren't the best reviews. Now, our restaurant that I work at is been one of the highest ranked restaurants in the area, and with that, we're 2 years old. With that, you're going to get some negative reviews. Not everybody's going to be happy, and so he's reading these reviews, and he's asking us, there's things from the bad service, to food, to the hostesses, to the loud ambiance of the music of the restaurant. So it's a mix of different things. And so he's asking us, and he's reading this and asking us to focus on all that the servers did wrong. Kind of seemed to be the main gist of what was being discussed. Now, my frustration is that these pre-shifts become very one-sided, and they become very prone into like what the servers are doing wrong, and they're not very action oriented. There's not practical tips that are given to us to what we can do to improve. And so for me, that's really important. So I wanted to try to steer the conversation into, hey, what's a good solution, both for servers and management. And so I raised my hand and I was called on, and I said, so as we're reading these reviews, I'm, seeing that there are things that the servers can do, better communication, learning to ask questions better, learning to listen and explain the dishes a little bit better so that we could avoid any of these issues. But also I noticed in these reviews, we have a lot, and not just these ones, but in past ones, we've had ones on the ambiance or the music being a level of a high level that is actually really hard to hear other people. And so I presented this, and instead of a discussion, I got deflection and pushback. And then I was told by my general manager that I wasn't taking responsibility, even though I know these reviews were not geared towards me, but I think overall, as servers, we can always learn better skills. And so that's why I presented the question that way, because I didn't want to come off as deflective, as not taking responsibility, and said, hey, like, here's the things that we can do, but as a whole, what are some good methods that we can do, servers, hostesses, bar, back of house management, like let's kind of talk about this, right? Because this is important. And that's not what I got. I didn't get that discussion. And so I get this pushback, I got this deflection, and the truth is I was frustrated. Even the next morning, I still had that frustration kind of lingering, because it's like, I care and I want this to do well, and I want us to do well, and I want the servers to do well, but there has to be more of a discussion in order for us to understand how to do well. Instead of just being told to do well, there needs to be some practical steps that we can work together. But the truth is I had to make a choice. I had to acknowledge my frustration. I had to check in with myself, and I had to leave it out of my guest interaction, because at the end of the day, the frustration of myself and my manager is not on my tables. This is not their issue. This is not the issue. And so when you have a situation, we've got to learn to separate and realize that a situation that happens over here does not necessarily need to be brought into over here. Now, it's not that we're not human and we're robotic and you're not gonna feel those frustrations. It's that we've got to learn to separate those things so that you can be present with where you're at. We take the situation over here, we focus on it over here, but then this is what we gotta let go of. And once you've taken care of and you've done the things that you can control, you gotta let that go. And you gotta realize that, hey, maybe I need to go back and check on this, but right now I'm over here and this is where I am at. So the end result is that I had a great shift. I had some really great tables. I made some really good connections with people, and I wasn't going to let that one person, I wasn't going to let that manager actually ruin my night. Let's talk about some practical ways to actually stay present during a shift, because this is all great when you hear this on a video, but how do you actually take practical steps to do these things? And I know we all work in different types of restaurants with different levels and different people. So this is why I talk a lot about self-regulation and self-reflection, because you got to see where you're at and the people around you are at. So you want to acknowledge your emotions. If you're upset, if you're frustrated, if you're feeling a specific way, I don't want you to ignore it. Actually name it. By naming it, it gives you power over that issue, right? Being present isn't about ignoring what the issue is, right? Or ignoring the frustration. It's about not being drowned by naming it, you learn to kind of enclose that so that you can have the power that you need to have over it. You want to self-regulate and self-check. How are you showing up? This is what we talked about earlier. It's your mindset. How are you feeling? Like, feel those emotions, like acknowledge those, see where you're at and what needs to be regulated and what needs to be dealt with and what doesn't need to be dealt with in those moments. Learn to step back and refocus. What's in your control? And the things that are not in your control, you need to let go of the rest. Because once again, those situations will be there, but we need to take and deal with them in the moment that we need to deal with them, be present with those issues, those emotions, and then move on to the next thing. And it's not that you're throwing those or you're pressing those down. It's like I'm giving them, I'm acknowledging this, I'm naming this, I'm regulating, I'm looking so that I can be present in the areas that I need to be present with and the guests that I need to be present with. And then finally, you want to use little micro resets. Breathe, adjust your posture, re-engage with your surroundings. This is all where those 3 levels of presence come in, of presence of self, presence with the environment, and presence with your table. Now, the next time that you catch yourself zoning out or carrying frustration, I want you to just pause. Take a deep breath and reset. Now, when you're in the rush of all of this, that can seem like hard to do. But the more that you find those spaces outside of work to create these, the more that you're gonna find them inside of work. You're gonna find little spaces and little gaps, and even during all of the chaoticness, that you can just step back and reflect, and that you can step back and breathe. Being present isn't just about service. It's about making your own shift better. I want you to comment below what's one thing that usually pulls you out of the present, being present at work. Thank you all. Until the next shift, have a blessed day.